So it begins.
Is this it? Is this all you can conjure?
Hello you anemic bastards. I tried to get you to leave with that clusterfuck of an intro, but seeing as that you're all still here, well, I'm your host, Comrade Arkin, and let's step right into the news. Alright, so I was working on a fun video about the Democratic debates.
Hell yes, we're gonna take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not gonna allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
And I was going to briefly mention the Trump impeachment prospects in that video, but then this happens, and now I can't just relegate it to a segment in that video, so I'm making this video here and now where I'll just sort of break down my thoughts on the whole thing. And in case you thought my entire channel would be nihilistic shit like the last video, well, stop it. Get some help. The power shooting is what prompted me to start this channel, and I was compelled to make that video because of just how close to home it was. And I'll definitely do more serious deep dive style content like the last video again. That won't be this whole channel, or even probably most of it.
Now, shall we begin?
Now, this being probably the biggest news story of 2019, I imagine that even the most isolated of cave dwellers knows what's going on, but just for the sake of posterity, I'll give a quick rundown. In mid-2016, there were baseless accusations of collusion between Donald Trump's campaign and the Russian government. Then in May 2017, the Department of Justice created a special counsel headed by Robert Mueller to investigate the claims. Then the mainstream media picked up on this and propagated this borderline conspiracy theory for nearly 3 years.
Putin, Russia hates Russia, Putin, Russia's Russia, Moscow, Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, the Russians,
Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russia against us. Russians, Russia against the U.S. The Russian government scheme. The Russians, Vladimir Putin, Russia, Putin and Russia, Moscow, Russia, the Russians, Putin, the Soviet Empire, the second of the 20th century's great evils, communism, Russia, assault by Russia.
Then in April of this year, Mueller's report was released and, quote, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities, unquote. In other words, no collusion. Then the media and other Russiagate truthers tried desperately to cover their asses and latched on to stupid and inaccurate things that Trump said regarding the Mueller report, and rather than formally apologizing for their spreading of misinformation, pretty much all these people just clung on to whatever strands were left out of what I can only assume to be partisan tribalism. Then for the next few months, stories pop up every now and again about the Mueller report. Mueller retires as special counsel, public trust in the media just absolutely plummets. Talks of impeachment begin among the Democrats in the summer, and after a bunch of vacillation on the part of Nancy Pelosi, it comes out that the Trump campaign supposedly extorted the president of Ukraine into investigating Joe Biden's son. Then on the 24th of September, a formal impeachment inquiry is launched by Nancy Pelosi, and now we're all caught up. And there we are. I'm sure that while I make this video, more stuff will come out about this on a rolling basis, but unless I want this video to take 2 months, I'll just have to skip through most of it. So far, it looks really bad for the Democrats. The Department of Justice has said that Trump won't be investigated, his approval ratings are spiking heavily upwards, and now the Senate voted unanimously to release the whistleblower complaint. It's rather obvious to me that unless it didn't indict Trump in any substantial way, there's no way this would have passed unanimously. The Democrats hyped this up to be this big thing, this scolding inculpation of Donald Trump. What was actually in the transcript? Well, Trump mentioned Biden twice with vague remarks about how it'd be good to investigate his son for some shady shit that he allegedly did while on the board of a Ukrainian oil company named Burisma. That's it. That's all there is. The rest is just boring political talk, you can see it for yourself. Then people start saying, well yeah, but it wasn't the full transcript, which is technically true. It was compiled based on notes of the conversation, but you can tell it's nearly exact to the actual exchange. All of Trump's mannerisms and turns of phrase are there, and you can see the somewhat broken English of Zelensky. and they can't release a recording because, well, they stopped recording phone calls made by the president back in the 70s. There's also a rapidly growing collection of evidence that there was actual quid pro quo committed by Joe Biden rather than Trump, and that the DNC is just trying to cover it up. I'll leave some links in the description regarding that whole thing. Then on the 26th, this whistleblower complaint was released, and once again, it's bullshit. Ignoring the fact that it's a second-hand source based on hearsay, and ignoring that the whistleblower is a CIA operative who reportedly has political bias against Trump, it's basically just an overlong opinion piece about the transcript. The Democrats have been shooting themselves in the foot over and over again for the last few months, to the point where they're walking on stubs, and now they've up and pulled out the sawed-off shotgun to just end it all. The Democrats were gambling on this in their desperation, and that gamble has now backfired horribly. The way I see it, they've handed Trump the election. From the endless pandering and poor attempts at being relatable on the debate stage, to the unrelenting identity politics, to the open embrace of far-left policy positions, and now this absolute fiasco. If, or rather when, Trump isn't convicted, he'll be able to say truthfully and undeniably that he was exonerated, and then 4 more years. Except at that point, any and all principled opposition to Trump that still remains would be shattered and discredited. I personally am not necessarily for or against Trump. I'm generally ambivalent towards him. He's done some good shit, he's done some bad shit, but ultimately to me, he's the lesser of two evils. It isn't even that I don't want him to be replaced, but rather that his only potential replacements are Mike, electrocute the gays Pence, Joe, I like diddling kids Biden, Bernie, but it's democratic socialism Sanders, Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, and John, I might have killed my neighbor in Belize McAfee. Tulsi Gabbard is actually pretty good on most things except economic policy, and I might support her against Donald Trump, except her campaign is being suffocated by the Democratic establishment, so I'll probably not have the chance. So yeah, I suppose that's all. Madness, distrust, and lies are engulfing the country, and I am absolutely unsurprised. Also, before I go, I have a correction to issue about the last video. My account of the events of the shooting itself were based mostly on news reports, but I've been contacted by one of the survivors, who I'll leave anonymous, and he gave me a rather different account from what the media reported.
Hi, so I watched your latest videos and I wanted to correct a couple of facts in the earlier part of it. I actually personally know somebody who was in the Poway synagogue shooting, and they say that there's some facts that the media misconstrued for their own benefit that I would just like to point out. So, the gunman entered the room, and Lori Kay was shot immediately as she was the closest to him, and she was the furthest back in the synagogue. She didn't jump in front of the rabbi, she didn't sacrifice her life. She was just a good person, and unfortunately the media misconstrued her to be this God-loving hero, or just this hero in general that jumped in front of the rabbi to sacrifice her life, but unfortunately she was just the first one closest to the shooter in the room and got shot. The rabbi was shot from distance, shooting at the altar by the shooter, and that's why his hands got shot and it wasn't very accurate. They also said that the gunman's gun jammed. No gun jammed. The off-duty officer who attends the services got up with his gun and started chasing the boy, and the boy just ran. My friend who was in the shooting, actually, as soon as the gunman came in, stood up and bolted, and he ran as fast as he could, and the gunman yelled at him, "You better run, motherfucker." And he ran into another room and hid under the table, and the gunman chased him, and the gunman asked, "Is anyone here?" Something like that, while he was hiding under the table, and then left the room after he didn't see him on first glance. And then the off-duty officer started chasing him, chased him out of the building after the gunman had already fired at several people, and he was arrested outside of the synagogue.
I'll leave links in the description to my sources and other videos about this, as well as Twitter, because being political on YouTube unfortunately necessitates having a Twitter account. God preserve my wretched excuse for a soul. New video soon, bye!